Hello and welcome to DSR's Words Matter. I'm David Rothkopf, joined this week as every week by the thoughtful and generally good-tempered Norm Ornstein. Are you in good spirits today, Norm?
I'm about the same as I've been, David. So good spirits doesn't really describe it. It's a nice day. I had my dog groomed. He looks wonderful. And
Your
then there's
dog,
the world around us.
my poor
How's
dog,
your dog?
my poor dog. He fell down the stairs the other day. As some people who
Yeah,
listen here, and he injured. In human beings we have the ACL. That
yeah.
he injured his CCL. That's the equivalent in his back leg. And then because he was walking around on one leg, he injured the other one, and so he couldn't walk anymore. And so brought him to the doctor, and they said, "Oh well, that's easy to fix. We'll just do two operations, one on each leg, and it'll take him 8 weeks to recover." And um, uh, so he's getting an operation tomorrow on both legs. And
Oh, hey, boy.
oh, hey, boy is right. But we will nurse him back to health because he's a vital member of the DSR family,
Yeah.
as is your dog, although I don't see him in his usual place there.
No, and if you're lucky, you won't have to sell your car to pay for two operations because
Um,
they're not inexpensive.
no, they're really expensive. We do have dog with pet insurance.
Oh,
We'll see whether they pay us for it.
well,
Or any of it.
I
But
got bad news for you. The subsidies were taken away.
oh yeah, the Obamacare dog operation
Yeah.
subsidies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No
well,
puppy care, it's called.
puppy. Yeah, it's a bit well. Anyway, he'll be fine. I'm sure he'll be fine.
Yeah.
But it's a thing.
You'll
Uh,
have to go on injured reserve.
yeah, I know with right with the ACL. So let's turn the subject to one of the world's best people, and really a great example to America, the face of the United States, the voice of the United States, our press secretary Carolyn Levitt. She just said, but little not too long ago, the Democrat Party's main constituency is made up of Hamas terrorists, illegal aliens, and violent criminals. And I just wanted to get your reaction because in the past, if somebody said something like that, they literally would not still be in their job before they got the last syllable out of their mouth. But she will no doubt be embraced by the president, or at least he'll chase her around the desk, trying to embrace her because I don't know, that's just who he is. What do you think of this?
The coarsening of the culture, the coarsening of the language, the willingness to accept and even embrace the most vile sentiments and language is in the DNA of Donald Trump and this administration. That is disgusting. But let's keep in mind as well that we have a litany from the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. I have said many times that we've had speakers who've lied before. This is the first serial liar we've had as Speaker. And from Tom Emmer from my native Minnesota, saying that the No Kings rally on Saturday is a hate America rally and trying to stir up violence against the people going there. And that, of course, is also what Caroline Levitt is trying to do. And we know the goal here. It's not just to discredit Democrats. And of course, it's this march nationwide is not simply going to be Democrats. It's going to be lots of other people who believe that we're marching headlong towards autocracy and want to stand up and say no. And saying no, not just to Donald Trump, but to the Supreme Court, which has enabled all of this and which may be on the verge of destroying whatever is left of voting rights in America. Uh, and Carolyn Levitt is just a part of it. Trump picked her deliberately because he knew she would say things like that. He knew she would have contempt for the press corps, for anybody who asked a question that wasn't a slavishly, lickspittily tribute to Donald Trump. And it's worked. And of course, the shocking thing is the lack of pushback, including from the press corps, which is a disgrace.
Well, I thought in your response you would bring up the recent discovery about the chats among young Republicans.
Let's talk about that. And, I was reading something very interesting, which was from a very good political scientist named Jonathan Bernstein, who does a Substack. And he was saying so much of the reaction to these young Republicans, those that the vile vice president, J.D. Vance, said was just a bunch of college kids doing what college kids do. 40-year-old men, including a state senator, close aides to Trump and members of Congress. But what Jonathan said is there have been a lot of comments that are, well, who could be surprised about this? And the problem with that is we cannot normalize it by saying, yeah, that's just how they are. We have to keep repeating this for those who don't follow it to understand what the Republican Party is, because these are not outliers. They represent what the Republicans stand for now. And we had another interesting incident, which was a picture in a Republican member's office behind the desk of one of his aides of an American flag with a swastika in it. And, according to Donald Trump, defiling the flag gets an automatic 1-year prison term. And this member of Congress said, it's disgusting, it's vile, somebody planted it. And we're doing a full investigation. Yeah, full investigation. He walked past that every single day. And that's, frankly, they're perfectly happy to encourage Nazis, to identify with Nazis. And the fact is that everything that's going on out there with ICE and their thugs is American Gestapo.
Yeah, well, I mean, they wouldn't have to, wave Nazi flags or embrace Nazis or defend Nazi rallies for us to have this picture because of the way they behave. And it gets us into what I really want to talk about here today, because language is one thing, and the language they use is
Yeah.
vile, and the names that they call people are vile. Um, but language is a gateway to something else, not just to understanding the speaker, but to understanding the intentions of the speaker. And we've seen something happen here in the United States over the course of the past 8 months, which is really profound, really profound. And I don't think it can be overstated. And that is not just that the president of the United States is seeking executive powers beyond which any prior president has ever had. It's how he wants to use them. And he wants to use the executive powers of the presidency to wage, well, what he sees as the successor to the war on terror. It's a war on Americans. It's a war on progressives. And he literally wants to bring to bear the military of the United States, the National Guard, ICE, but also, as we've learned today, the IRS, the intelligence community, not just to call names, not to do the jobs that they are supposed to be doing, but to target, jail, harass, penalize anybody who doesn't agree with them. We had a special podcast, which I hope you'll listen to, because we did 2 specials today, Norm. We did a good one earlier this morning with former U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, which is really good, and I think you'll like. But the one that I'd encourage you to listen to, and I encourage everybody to listen to, was with Michigan Senator Alyssa Slotkin. And, she comes from the national security community.
Yep.
And she's been one of the voices, one of the strongest and clearest voices, I think, um, for calling out how this is being done. And she pointed out that, and as she did several weeks ago, that in September, an executive order was promulgated that makes critics of the president the enemies of the United States and defines them as Antifa, anti fascists, anti capitalists, anti Christian, anybody with those sentiments, and anybody who funds anybody with those sentiments, um, as people that should be targeted by US law enforcement, US military. They're the new enemy. They are Al Qaeda for Donald Trump. And they are we. Because the State Department, I'll stop my little rant here, but the State Department yesterday canceled the visas of 8 people who had the temerity to post on social media criticism of Charlie Kirk, fact-based criticism. They pulled the visas. And as I said, the IRS is going to go after these people, the FBI, the military. We are using the US government to target half the fucking population of the United States as the central organizing principle of US national security. The war on terror was a crazy central organizing principle. This is many quantum levels crazier and more dangerous.
So I would expand it in just one way. It's not just a war on Americans. It's a war on Trinidad and Tobago, on Colombia, and especially Venezuela. And we know now he has enlisted the CIA in going after Venezuela. The guy who is lobbying over and over for the Nobel Peace Prize is waging a set of actions that are illegal in international law, that are immoral, blowing up fishermen. And when a reporter asked him today, well, why don't we just have the Coast Guard intercept these boats, get on board, and see if they're transporting drugs or if they are gang members? And he brushed that off and basically said, you shouldn't be fishing. So there's almost an acknowledgement that these are innocent fishermen, that he's just doing this performatively. Murdering people performatively doesn't bother him at all. And I raise that in part because it tells us how immoral this man is, how much of a sadistic, narcissistic, I used to say sociopath, I would say psychopath now is, and all of those around him enabling him. The State Department, whose Secretary of State is Marco Rubio, who used to be somebody who was for development and diplomacy, was talked about his deep religious values. He is responsible for the deaths of more than 300,000 people, including countless children, because he cut off the aid that was ready to be sent, food aid and other aid, to farmers, to children. Children are dying even as we speak. Marco Rubio lied and said nobody has died. And he's the one responsible for taking away these visas. This is outrageous. And I have to say that Viktor Orban and Sisi in Egypt and Erdogan in Turkey, who are some of the role models, some of the blueprint that the Project 2025 and Trump have used, comes straight from Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban looks like a saint compared to what these people are doing to their own citizens and to anybody who's here in the country. And the immorality of it, and the fact that you have masked, unidentified thugs going in unmarked cars, breaking into homes without warrants, roughing people up, doing hit and run against other cars, having one of these thugs ram his car into another with a woman inside, basically called her a bitch and shot her 7 times, and then lied about it. And the Homeland Security people lie about it all the time. And we have to worry Caroline Levitt and among others, and the vile is a term that goes widely here for many, Ted Cruz, basically saying this is George Soros, uh, Trump fresh off his victory lap over the settlement. We'll see what comes of it in the Middle East. Now, having people who endorse the anti Semitism that has always surrounded invoking George Soros, saying that Antifa, and this is Kristi Noem and Tulsi Gabbard as well, basically saying that they're worse than Al Qaeda, as if there's an organization. There is no Antifa organization, but I worry about what will happen on Saturday because
This is what I'm getting at, Norm, and
yeah,
I have to say, I share your concern about Venezuela, and I share your concern about a lot of these sort of near abroad policies and the shift of U.S. national security's focus to a focus on sort of these kind of American centric, or I mean homeland centric issues, and away from bigger geopolitical questions. And this is one of the things we talked to Jake Sullivan about on our other podcast. But I just want to point this a step further and pick up on something you said, because this is not words, but they're saying about the No Kings rally is that these people who are out there doing what Americans do, demonstrating, are anti-American, and they're using this language,
yep,
Antifa, or hate America, this other kind of language, which is directly connected to their language for targeting people.
yep,
And there is the law case against Comey. There's the law case against the Attorney General of New York. There is, it seems like, about to be one against John Bolton
and Andrew Weissman.
and yeah, that seems like that is percolating as well. But if there's one thing that's absolutely clear, is that they're going to go after George Soros's organization. They're the announcement out of the Treasury Department about a reorganization at the IRS to focus their work on people who are funding progressive organizations, and to focus the IRS's criminal division on people who are funding progressive organizations, as if being in opposition to Donald Trump were illegal in the United States of America. Just imagine yourself, Norm. Imagine your family. How many of the organizations to which George Soros, who's blessed to have enough money to give a lot of money to, have you given some money to? Have the listeners of these podcasts given some money to? Are they ready to be classified as criminals, targeted by the IRS, targeted by the FBI, targeted by the US military as the greatest threat that exists, targeted because what they're doing, Norm, is that they're calling you, your family, your friends, me, the listeners to this podcast, as terrorists.
Yep.
We are the 2025 equivalent in the eyes of the US government of Al Qaeda. And they are using not the same tools that we use to fight Al Qaeda, they're using more tools to go after people. And it's just starting. And to me, I really think, and I'm here to criticize you today, Norm, I don't think you've been worried enough. I don't think you've been concerned enough
Yeah.
about what they're doing.
Well, I think I'm at the max, but I'll go even further. And of course, you're absolutely right. And by the way, it's not just George Soros; it's Act Blue. It's every organization that,
Act Blue, by the way, which is a platform
yeah,
to allow ordinary Americans to donate to Democrats. Period. That's all it is. And every single listener to this podcast, I guarantee it, has used Act Blue to donate some money to somebody.
Yep, I certainly have. But all of these efforts to undermine elections, and it certainly appears as if John Roberts and the other five partisan hacks on the Supreme Court are poised, probably in June, maybe even sooner, to in effect blow up what's left of the Voting Rights Act. It basically overruling themselves and what they did 2 years ago over a majority minority district, saying the Voting Rights Act requires that there be at least one in Alabama. And this was over one in Louisiana. And I heard Brett Kavanaugh during the oral argument say, well, these laws protecting against discrimination are not meant to live forever. They can go for some time, but then there's a time when they're up. And we know that this is, in effect, what John Roberts did with the Shelby County decision that blew up the most significant part of the Voting Rights Act, Section 5, that required pre-clearance. If you were going to do a redistricting or any kind of measure in voting law that would potentially harm minority voters, you had to get it pre-cleared by the Justice Department. Now they're going after Section 2, which at least allows candidates, individuals, and others to sue if these kinds of Jim Crow actions are taking place. And my guess is what they're going to do is is to say, well, we'll still keep a Section 2, but the only ones who can bring the action are the federal government through the Justice Department, meaning every one of these majority minority districts in the South, and we have them in Louisiana, South Carolina, North Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, and more, are going to go away. And what's disgusting about this is that John Roberts said at the time, well, we needed those back in the days of Jim Crow, but now there's no discrimination. We don't need to worry about it. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg famously said, that's like saying, my umbrella's up in the middle of a torrential rainstorm, but I'm not getting wet, so I can just put down my umbrella. The day after the Shelby County decision came out, Shelby County itself went to reinstate the Jim Crow laws that had existed before. And we know, because they've said it flat out, that all of these states that have majority minority districts are going to immediately move to erase them and basically erase much of the presence of people of color in Congress and go back to the Jim Crow era. And that means they're going to allow any kind of violence against African Americans and other people in the minority. And that means as well what we know is coming. This Supreme Court, let's even give them a scintilla of credibility when they did the immunity decision.
What? Why?
Well, I'll take it away in a minute. Don't worry.
Okay.
It's a rhetorical device, David.
I see.
That let's say that one or two of them really thought that Trump wasn't going to go too far and maybe it would protect Joe Biden. Let's say that's the case. Even if that were true, and I do not believe it's true, but a lot of people have made that supposition, everything that he's done since, all of the things that you've talked about so eloquently today, all of the disgraceful moves towards thuggery, fascism, and autocracy, in which he brags over and over, I can do anything I want, I have immunity. Has there been even a moment where one of those six partisan hacks has said, whoa, maybe we went too far? No, they keep giving him more power. They keep giving him the green light to do anything that he wants. We have lost many of the protections that we thought we had. And here I'll also throw more shade on our press corps. Everything that you said is true. We are on the verge of one of the most vicious autocracies in our lifetimes. And there have been plenty of them. And they're treating it as if it's sort of at the edge of normality. We still have these Trump lickspittles going on CNN every single day, justifying what they're doing. They have shouting matches, but people watching are, just going to hear a bunch of people shouting. The White House press corps has done absolutely nothing. The only action that we've seen taken, which includes the right wing outlets, is when Pete Hegseth, maybe he was drunk when he did it, maybe he wasn't, said, no, you can't have press credentials unless you only report what we want you to report. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. But that's too little, too late. And we have a press corps that cannot understand the threat that they face and we face right now. And of course,
That's just so right. And it's one of the things I wanted to bring up with you. And I'm glad you're sitting down. Of course, you're always sitting down in these
yeah,
conversations, but I'm glad you're sitting down because what I'm about to say is going to drive you to aneurysm because it did me. But I have to say, we're going to say right now that those of you who listen to this podcast as guests, we love that you listen as guests. We are super supportive. If you're listening on YouTube as a guest, super supportive. This is great. But we have to support this little independent means of journalism. George Soros doesn't support it. You do. And well, as long as that's legal, what we'd like you to do is go to the dsrnetwork.com, click on membership, and become a member. And then you can get bonus content, which is going to follow this. And there's all sorts of bonus content you get if you're a member. But you also get the good feeling of knowing that you're fighting the good fight at the moment we need to fight the good fight. So for those of you who are not members, thanks for watching. And go, come back for others of our podcasts. And for those of you who are on YouTube or whatever, please, by all means, click thumbs up, click you like it, subscribe there too. But what helps the most is to go to the dsrnetwork.com, click on membership. And if you're a member, you can stand by for more.